you haven't seen Oppenheimer, have you?
Not yet. No.
Because I just wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Very excited. There's a new Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah, that's what. Because like I had zero interest in seeing a movie about Robert Oppenheimer. Zero interest in, just the subject matter. And there was, like the Barbenheimer thing of like, which movie do you see, Barbie or Oppenheimer? And I was like really leaning towards Barbie. Like I was interested in a Barbie movie and I was not interested in an Oppenheimer movie, but it did come down to like, I love Christopher Nolan. Like he's made some of my all-time favorite movies. I love his whole Batman series. Dark Knight is like maybe the best superhero movie ever made. And even like Rise of the Dark Knight is growing on me. Like I watched it recently and I liked it even more.
Fan.
Yeah. Again, it's like, it's my critique of so many Batman movies is there just wasn't enough Batman. Like it was a really cool movie, a really cool idea of like a city just being sort of like occupied by an invading force and stuff and what that does to a society and like, taking Batman out of that. But it's still like, I want to see a Batman movie. I want to see Batman jump around doing it. And there was not enough of that. But it's still like,
it gave us cool. Bane.
Yeah, Bane was so good in it. And then The Prestige. Prestige is like one of the greatest movies I've ever seen.
That's my favorite Christopher Nolan movie.
It's amazing. It's so good. And yet it was
David Bowie as
Bowie as Tesla. Yeah. So just so good. And Gollum. Gollum himself.
Memento is also my top 3 Nolan movies. Holy shit.
Yeah, Memento's amazing. I haven't watched Memento in forever, but yeah, that one that started it all. And like, I love that. But yeah, it's been forever since I've seen it. I need to check it out. Love Tenet. Tenet might be...
Dude, that's creeping into my top 3 too.
It might be the best James Bond movie ever.
Holy fuck, it's so good. The minute it was available for purchase, I bought it digitally.
Yeah, I saw that in the theater. Like, that was like, I think the first movie I saw in the theater, like in the pandemic era, was Godzilla versus King Kong. But then Tenet was like the second. It was right there. But yeah, so I was like, okay, yeah, I don't care about Oppenheimer, but how can there like it's a Christopher Nolan movie. It's got to be good. It's got like I got to go check it out. And my mom had seen it. She liked it a lot. She was raving about it. And I was telling her about Barbie. And I guess she hadn't like heard about Barbie. So she was kind of like, what are you talking about? Like, because I'm like, no, it's like an intellectual Barbie movie. Like, I think I might go check it out. And she, like, I think maybe she shamed me out of seeing Barbie. She's like, oh, Barbie. Like, she just started laughing.
When you, like, with the Barbenheimer thing, it's like, would I rather see a movie about a guy that invented the thing that's going to eventually kill me or a toy?
Right, yeah.
That I prefer, like, a Mattel, like...
But, like, as the guy who did Transformers versus G.I. Joe and GoBots, like, I feel a kinship with this approach of, like, I'm going to take this toy, this like this icon, this thing that people were playing with, and some of their earliest memories are tied into this, and I'm going to try to make some like grand statement with it. I really like that approach to it.
That's so
like
cool.
So that was what attracted me to Barbie as a movie. But no, so yeah, just talking to my mom, like I think she was probably picturing like a CGI Barbie thing that is like clearly like 100% for kids. I think she probably was thinking of that.
It seemed like a commitment. It was a couple. Was it like over 3 hours?
It's long and didn't feel it though.
It was awesome.
It was breezy and it's got that Nolan pace where like you're here, you're there, you're weaving all through. You're in different eras that are bouncing back and forth. Non-linear, I guess, and different film stocks. And different,
I saw a black and white usage.
There's black and white. It's all over. And like the story kind of reads a certain way. And then after you kind of like get into its rhythm, then you start to understand like, oh, that scene at the beginning actually happens after the scene. Like you start to understand the chronology as you get into its rhythm. But
star-studded
cast, really good cast. And like the thing that really stuck out to me about it, again, because I don't know anything about Robert Oppenheimer, and that was like I know him, father of the atom bomb, all this kind of stuff. Like I know him as a name, but I didn't even know him as like, oh, he was the director of the Manhattan Project. Like I knew he was part of that. I didn't know the ins and outs, and I didn't even know kind of what the Manhattan Project looked like. where's this taking place?
Me neither. You got me, man.
And so then it was nice to kind of see, like, oh, this is what, and it's almost like a Western. Because it's like
from the preview, it felt like that.
And he's got a hat. He's got his hat.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a Western. There's a lot of horseback riding and stuff. And yet it's kind of like McCabe and Mrs. Miller, where it's like they just kind of build this town in the middle of the West, that this like kind of pop-up town to be the sort of community of scientists and their families to build.
So that was where like they set it up. They out in like.
Yeah, what's
like
it?
New Mexico.
Yeah, New Mexico,
Los
Alamos, New Mexico, and stuff. Yeah, it's about the nature of the universe. Like, there's all this heady stuff to it, and I realized like most of the stuff I know about this kind of stuff probably comes from like comic books and comes from specifically like Watchmen. And I realized, this is, Christopher Nolan did The Dark Knight, and now he's getting to do Watchmen. Like, it's kind of like his Watchmen, and it's like. Dr. Manhattan, John, what was his name? John, Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen is John Osterman, I think. So you got John Osterman, and then you have Robert Oppenheimer, Dr. Manhattan, this doctor who's in charge of the Manhattan Project. And it's got the same kind of themes where it's like he's kind of, a little disconnected from like everyday reality and maybe even like sociopathic.
Because like does he like, does it go inside his head when he's like doing math or like thinking about like the universe?
Thinking about the universe, and then he even like he's like mad at one of his professors, and so he like squirts cyanide on his professor's apple.
Oh my god!
And then I think Niels Bohr is there, and then Niels Bohr is like guest lecturer or whatever, and then he picks up the apple and he's about to eat it, and then Oppenheimer knocks it out of his hand and he says, wormhole, which was kind of interesting. Like just wormhole as like a physics thing, but then a worm as in, oh, there was a wormhole in the apple, don't eat it. And so, but it did feel like Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen. Like, and obviously like Alan Moore knows all this stuff. And Alan Moore is like a baby boomer. Cause like my mom is probably like around the same age as Alan Moore. And so like Oppenheimer was like this big figure, like she remembers all this when she was a kid because he'd be in like Time magazine and all, like he was kind of like a celebrity. So she had this familiarity with him like from her childhood and stuff. And so Alan Moore so like I think when he was making Dr. Manhattan, it's like, okay, I'm going to have basically Captain Atom, and I'm going to make this kind of like grounded in reality version of Captain Atom. And so he was like sort of modeling him after Oppenheimer. And again, it's all the same stuff of like thinking about the nature of the universe, this and that. And then he, creates this thing. And the other thing that made me think.
Andy Serkis plays Oppenheimer's dick.
Well, that was the other thing. Because like nudity is such like a big part of Watchmen and like the Dr. Manhattan parts of Watchmen. Like he's always naked. And that was a motif in Oppenheimer too, where like there's a lot of scenes of him just kind of sitting naked and hanging out and talking and infidelities and things like having these affairs and things, and then there'd be these scenes where he'd be like being like grilled in front of a panel or whatever, and then they'd show him just like kind of sitting there naked in front of everybody, like as this internal.
They're like, holy shit, Oppenheimer's got a huge hammer.
Like I wonder how much of a comics fan Nolan is, because I do wonder. Like it's like he wanted to make a James Bond, and so he made Tenet. And it's like, I wonder if like he's been cooking up a Watchmen and like never got to do it. And so it's like Oppenheimer was kind of, like, this is his way of doing Watchmen. Like
a backdoor Watchmen.
Because I did kind of assume it's like, oh, this is probably a guy who doesn't care about superheroes. It's just like, how are you not going to do a Batman movie? So like, but then I'm looking, it's like, he was born in 1970. He probably was like a big comics fan, and probably was like the exact right age when like the Dark Knight comic was coming out, the Watchmen comics coming out. So it's got to like
he definitely like he puts on, you know how like he has his uniform, like the suit. He's like seems like real like not uptight, but like
Nolan or Oppenheimer.
Nolan, like listening to Nolan do like interviews or like there was one where he was like in a video store talking. He's obsessed with genre shit too. Like he might look like he does not, but like you're right, Tom. He knows that he's like, he definitely knows this shit.
So I just wondered if like, did Alan Moore do such a great job of like deconstructing Oppenheimer in the creation of Dr. Manhattan that it feels like this movie is like an adaptation of Watchmen. You know, did Alan Moore do such an amazing job, or is Chris Nolan kind of like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, yeah, the motif of Oppenheimer as a nude figure. Oh, that's a good that works. I'm going to stick that in here. Or, yeah, Oppenheimer is Christopher Nolan's Watchmen. You know?
Watchmenheimer. We saw remember Joe. Remember you said you thought. Remember Joe Pesci as Albert Einstein.
Yeah, right. Alfred Molina, Albert Einstein. I forget, but yeah, Einstein's really good, and the movie is. Just like kind of like the Christopher Nolan shtick, going back to Memento and in The Prestige and stuff, the movie is kind of like a puzzle, because there's all these kind of assumptions you have all through it and like what you thought you saw. And then by the time you get to the end of the movie, it's like, you know what? I don't think what I thought I saw is what I really saw. So I want to see this again to see like, because it really does walk this line of like, what is Oppenheimer, like who is Oppenheimer, what's motivating him, what's doing, and like just because of like genre conventions and things, you think that he's doing this because of this, and but then looking back when he's sort of like on trial somewhat, it's like, maybe he wasn't, he's just kind of in the room where this stuff's going on, but maybe he is, so I need to
I'd like to see it here.
After I saw The Prestige, I immediately watched it again. Like I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on DVD and like immediately watched it again. And that's how I felt with Oppenheimer. I wanted to like, okay, let me watch this immediately to see.
The Joe Pesci as Albert Einstein's like, he's like, why don't you dance that uranium-235 over to me, Spider?
Yeah. I love how Nolan plays with like where you didn't necessarily see what you thought you saw the first time around and stuff. And when I was talking to my mom about like when we were talking and she was telling me that she saw it, she's like, and then there's like this, she's like, you're just like waiting for the scene where like they set off the first atomic bomb and like, and she's like, and when it goes off, it's like the whole theater shakes. It's like the loudest thing you've ever heard and stuff. So I was, getting ready for that scene and like you're waiting for, and then when it happens, but everything's like real, loud and building up. But then when the explosion comes, it's silent. Because in cinema, that is like, and Nolan is great. Like they had that in Dark Knight too, where it's like you take away the sound. That's sort of the most shocking thing you can do is take away the sound, and so it's silent. Kind of like the explosion in The Last Jedi. When Laura Dern smashes through and stuff.
The on Omaha Beach and Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Cuts the sound out, and I'm like, holy shit, what's happening?
And I thought that was interesting too, because my mom remembers there being this loud noise and blowing the thing out, but then the reality of it is that it's the opposite. It's just like he builds his thing up. It was like very smartly done, and it makes sense in retrospect. It's like, oh yeah, if you were going to make a movie about the atomic bomb, that would be like, that might have been the first thing he thought of, is like, oh yeah, when the atomic bomb goes off, that's going to be the quietest moment in the whole, like that's how you start your Oppenheimer movie, is with that idea, and then you build everything around that.
I gotta see this. I gotta see it. Like, I can't.
Yeah, how can you pass up a Nolan movie? Yeah, I think The Prestige was like the last Nolan movie that I didn't see in the theater. Like I saw Dunkirk, and Dunkirk was like, for me personally, was like his least like home run movie. It was like maybe my least favorite of his movies, but it's still great. And even that one, even though it's somewhat straightforward, it's real time, it's chronological, which is the real time aspect's very cool. But it also is kind of like at the end of it, you like realize you were watching a different movie than you thought you were. Even has it in that one, the sort of like the more conventional movie.
That movie's like a vibe.
Yeah,
and like it's kind of like. It's Christopher Nolan's weird hangout movie.
Weird hangout movie is Dunkirk. It's interesting because I think in like British history, like I think they have a different emotional association with all that. And I know like a lot of the criticism of Dunkirk was kind of like, it was almost coming from this like patriotic, like this British patriotism direction, where it's like, you didn't make the British heroic enough in that movie.
The Longest Day on VHS, it's like 49 international superstars. And my introduction to Dunkirk was Sean Connery's like, let's get them back for Dunkirk. I think he says that. It was like black and white. He's like, let's get them back for Dunkirk.
Floppenheimer. It sucked.
Ploppenheimer.
If you're not interested in the subject matter of Oppenheimer, maybe if you're like a fan of Watchmen, you can get like another perspective. Again, like Alan Moore's pretty great, and I feel like I've learned a lot of what I know about the 20th century. I learned through the lens of comic books. So yeah, this Oppenheimer definitely fed some of that.
Hey, why don't you dance that uranium-235 over to me, Spider?
Yeah, Joe Pesci would be a good Einstein. Like, to me, that's like this. Like, when I was saying the stunt casting, like when I was saying like Magic Mike as Abraham Lincoln. Like Joe Pesci as Albert Einstein would be pretty great. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Star and the Solar Legion from Image Comics.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
Follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli, on Instagram at Tom_Scioli, and support my Patreon. Go to patreon.com and search Tom Scioli.
Follow the show on Instagram at total_recall_show.